When we're talking about quadratics, you know that we can solve it with the square root, what do they call it? Square root method or something like that. Just to remind you guys what that is, if you have x plus 2 squared equals 8, we don't have to multiply this thing all the way out and then set it equal to 0 and solve it that way. At this point, we can solve it just by taking the square root of both sides here and here and saying this side is x plus 2. This side is plus or minus 2 root 2. Did I do that too fast? Do I need to talk through that real quick? Okay. If I have the square root of 8, why is it so far zoomed in? Whoa, it wasn't. Okay. If we have the square root of 8 like that, we know that that's the same thing as the square root of 4 times 2, right? Do we know the square root of 4? Yes, so that's something we can break apart one more time, except that's supposed to be a 4, like that. And we know the square root of 4 is 2 root 2. You remember that? Yes? Okay. So I'm the one that put the root sign in here, so I've got to remember the plus or minus, right? So then when I subtract 2 from both sides to solve for x, I just get x equals negative 2 plus or minus 2 root 2. That's a square root way to solve it using square roots. Yes? Okay. The other thing that it's asking us to do is to complete the square. We know we can use the square root way. We know we can use quadratic formula. We know we can graph, all those kind of things. But the other way we can use this is completing the square. So if we start off like this, and it says, what do we have to add to both sides to be able to solve this with completing the square? Well, maybe there's like a 5 over here or something. We don't really care about that. Okay. And this doesn't even have to be here. If they just want to say, what do we have to add in order to complete the square? Remember, we have to take this b term. Do you remember what to do? Take the b term, divide it by 2. Yes, and square it, right? So what is 8 divided by 2? 4. 4 squared? 16. So if this is the problem right here, then we're done, right? If it's saying, what do we have to add in order to complete the square? Take the b term, divide it by 2, and square it. If it's an equation already, though, and we're being asked to solve it, if I add 16 on this side, what else do I have to do? Add 16 to the other side. Okay? Keep going. Okay, so I have this perfect square trinomial right here. If from my perfect square trinomial, where do you want to go? To the binomial, right? Do you remember that? If I go to the binomial, what is the binomial? Square root. What's the sign of the middle? Do you remember that now? Now you do? Okay, good. 5 plus 16? 21. So now this is in kind of the same form as this is right up here, right? From here, if I have something that's being squared, in order to solve it, what do? Square root it. Both sides. On the left-hand side, I just end up with x plus 4. Because remember, when I'm square rooting something that's being squared, I just get the original thing. Okay? And what do I have on the right-hand side? Plus or minus. Do you guys know the square root of 21? Neither do I. Okay? Do I know anything that divides into 21 that's a squared number? 1, 3, 7, 21. Nope. So it just stays the square root of 21, right? Then when I subtract 4 from both sides, x is going to equal negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 21. Now remember, when you're entering it into your web program or your website, whatever, negative 4 plus the square root of 21, comma, negative 4 minus the square root of 21. Okay? I know some of you guys have been having trouble when you put both the answers in and just didn't put a comma or something like that. That's just us getting to know the program. Okay? So that's fine. But if you can get here, you can definitely get the 2 answers that you have to put in. Okay? What if it's x squared plus, minus 20? What's going to go? 20x. What's going to go here? Divide by 2 and square it. 100, right? Wait, plus 100 or minus 100? Negative 20 divided by 2 is what? Negative 10. But what's negative 10 squared? positive 100, right? So will I ever subtract anything right here? No, it's always going to be plus, right? What's the binomial that goes along with this one? Square root this one, square root this one. Use this sign. And it's squared, right? What about this one? Dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by what? 1/2. So what's 1/2 times 1/2? 1/4, right? So what's 1/4 squared? Square the numerator, square the denominator. 1 over 16. What would its binomial look like? 1/4, that's exactly right. Okay. Do you remember this now? Yeah, a little better? Okay. If you have any more questions, just ask. I'll help you. Okay?